Right, time to start a new video. Apologies about the lateness, but still. At least it's earlier than last time. So let's talk about why the individual must supersede the collective. Now that is not to say, and this is important, that somehow one person outweighs two in terms of just the general calculations of things. No, rather what it's saying is that the individual, in terms of what we think of them, must supersede the idea of the collective. So for example, my identity must supersede the United States as a whole thing. Because individuals are what define the collective, so they must, by necessity, be placed first. If you lose half of all Americans, well, then you're no longer going to have the same definition of the United States of America or the collective of Americans. Because fundamentally, those individuals that make it up have been removed, even if not all. And not to mention, in order to support others, the capabilities of the individual in question have to be recognized. A person cannot achieve things without, having the skills in the first place, and they cannot be assigned to do something without, recognizing it. If you do not recognize someone's abilities, fundamentally, they will not be hired by you to do that thing. After all, you don't see them as useful. And so their skills are wasted. I apologize. And thus, we must fundamentally accept the abilities of an individual and not group them together with a bunch of other people into some collectivist group. It's fundamentally inefficient. Not to mention, people are not monoliths, and planning for them to behave in such a way will lead to cracks in your reasoning. If you expect all black people to vote one way and all white people to vote another, you're going to be surprised when some go a different way than how you expect. And sometimes that can be a major deal. Let me ask you, if all black people voted Democrat, do you think Trump would have won the popular vote? Likely not. I don't believe he would. Simultaneously, if all white people voted Republican, then the Democrats would never have won an election. Because the whites are the majority in this country. Now, that's not to say it's a good or bad thing. One can debate that all they freaking want. Not my job. But when you recognize that and understand, okay, these are not collectives that just act the same. They're not a monolith of people. When you make it an action from that, you necessarily recognize their individuality. You accept, okay, these people are different. So who am I dealing with? Who am I interacting with in this situation? For example, let's use the race thing again. In terms of white people, who are you dealing with? Are you dealing with Donald Trump? Are you dealing with John Fetterman? Maybe Joe Biden? Who are you dealing with? Same with every other group of people. Could be autists, could be people with ADHD, could be literally any group. Who are you dealing with in particular? Because that's what matters. The individual matters. Not their label, not the collective they fall under. Because the individuals are what define that collective, and so they come first, especially because that is what you are dealing with actively. Sure, you're dealing with the autistic community, but who? Who are you interacting with? What autistic person are you dealing with? After all, people can be different even if they have the same disease or illness. That's just reality. And so, when you're amongst the collective, it becomes easier to escape responsibility, because when you ignore that and you do put up the monolith, well, guess what? People are going to say, well, if everyone else isn't doing anything, then I suppose I can do nothing too. They herd like sheep. They act as a pack. And they behave as they shouldn't. Why? Because in order to get things done, you need to act as an individual, to choose yourself to engage in an action. Or if you are choosing to be in the collective instead, well, then guess what? Everyone's weighing the same choice. And because everyone starts off not doing anything, that's what they're gonna do. Escaping responsibility because, hey, that's not my job. That's someone else's role. That's what someone else should do. That's those people. That's those people. You know what happens? People suffer as a result. People don't gain anything from just grouping in with a collective crowd, other than an ease of the burden of responsibility. and thus an escape from their own responsibility. It's not a good thing. And simultaneously, in benefit to that collective we speak of, if every individual strives to improve themselves, then the collective reaps benefits as a result. For example, let's say you have a group of 4 people, right? Small group, collectively, they are alright at what they do regularly. But if one strives to improve themselves in a specific area, let's say running, then everyone benefits, because when you need someone to get there fast, you got a runner. What if one studies so they're really good at medicine? Well, then, in a circumstance where basic first aid is needed, not only will they be good, but if it gets more complicated, or it's discovered to be more complicated than initially thought, that person is more than likely able to handle it. Maybe not the best, as if they were completely trained, but still decent. Same for someone who's trained to use a firearm. They can protect others and use the firearm effectively without risking others' lives. And finally, if the 4th one is really good at writing, well then, if a message needs to be sent, excuse me, then they can send it. Now apply that to every person on this planet, because it is true for every single one. Every single person benefits from working as individuals to improve themselves, to better themselves. Why? Because if everyone's doing that, then the collective ability goes up. Because remember, what is a collective in truth? An average. And so if you increase your individual abilities, then that average, ever so slightly, is raised. And it's raised higher and higher and higher the more people improve themselves. The more people go out there and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to make sure that I can compete. That is what people benefit from. They don't benefit from people who pray and hope that things get better. No, they benefit from actions that strive to achieve something, that strive to improve the person who's taking the action. That is what the collective benefits from. People benefit when the individual is put first, not over others, but over the idea of the average, the idea of the collective. Because they are what defines that collective. They are the averages, the samples, the population. Whether you take a few of them or take all of them, what defines the collective is not the general traits, but the averages of individuals. That is where those general traits come from, that one might talk about. You take the average individual, and you take all their information, and from there you get traits. They are descriptors that come after the individual defines it, after the individuals make up the collective. And you can never be fully individualistic or fully collectivist in practice. Excuse me again. There will always be a need for averages, and always a need for, how should I put this, an individual just as a thing. Even if you try to go full collectivist, completely ignore the individual and just go off averages, you're gonna get poor results, and it's gonna collapse in on itself, especially when the results are the same for 2 people. Because then you now have to start weighing something else. You have to start looking at individual traits, and thus the individual comes back, and people are naturally self-oriented, self-interested. That's just how we are, especially as kids. And so you can never fully get rid of the individual, and vice versa with the collective, because there'll always be averages. There'll always be someone who looks at a group of people and says, all right, they have these general traits, these general tendencies, etc., etc. Because people are built for pattern recognition. We're built to act as a group. Why? Because we're people, we're social creatures. That's how we operate. That just is. And thus, you can never go fully individualist or collectivist. But if you have to choose between the two, which to favor? The individual. Always. Because the individual is what defines the collective you wish to work for. And so leave it to the individual. Let them act. Let them behave. And let them be noble. That is how you ensure a strong society. People choosing as individuals to strengthen themselves, to better themselves, and to act accordingly to what is right. Not shoving people in monoliths, not making assumptions and hierarchies based on general trends. Individualism is what benefits us, not collectivism. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.